Okay, so this is Darrell James Hill, Ohioan KR et al., Ambassador, Trustee of the Concession 1213, President for the United States of America, 1787, Acting Officer, Commander, and then President of the United States of 1863, Acting Officer, Commander-in-Chief. Okay? Now, this is the document before you now is the three of the three. Now, this begins to look at the references I was making before about how a trust is set up and how you have to begin to consider it in order so that you can make good choices. Because if you don't know, you can't make the choice and you just have a brain full of questions. Number one is the basic trust I began to discuss out of document 2 of 3. And so when you're a baby, and this is the baby representation, yeah, your trustee is probably your mom and dad, hopefully in normal world, of many thousands of years. And then the executors, your mom and dad, and they're kind of trying to guide you through life until you can begin to make your own decisions and go further away from mom and dad, okay? And so that's how it's set up. And so that's just to keep you on track to become self-supporting and decision making. Now, when you get to be a 17, the adult, you get into the sovereign standing, okay? Remember from the first document that the status was live or dead, and standing was what your power was in the community and what your responsibility was in the community. In the American states, everybody is responsible as a settler, born as heir of the Declaration of Independence. So when you grow up, then you begin into the executor status and the ability to make those choices to take responsibility, and that is yours at birth to make sure the Declaration of Independence is implemented. Number 3 is the settler grantor. It's just common law of the Declaration of Independence. Common law, it was just based upon what was right and what was wrong. If there was a problem, you took it to a court, to a jury of your peers. The beneficiary and the executor, being you, then would have to give them the authority. And that's what you see today in our present courts. You give the jury the right to speak, which means jurisdiction, for the judgment of the law and the facts by that sovereign jury. Okay, so it's by the jury. It's not merely a jury trial, which is an adjective referring to a noun, but the responsibility by the authority of the jury. That meant that there's no other intervener. Whatever they want to know, they find out, and based on what they find out, they arrive at a judgment there from the people, and that keeps it from being twisted into something what we can see today, particularly during 2023, and since Mr. Trump was in office. You know, he had the Mueller investigation, and he's been in courts for 7 years, as far as I know, 7 or 8 years, because these people have just decided to use the courts any way they want. Okay, so here, then there's 4A, okay, and this has to do with around 1933, and when they came up with the Emergency Banking Act, and that is of the Declaration of Independence. It's obligated and can only be interpreted consistent with its derived authority from the people of the Declaration of Independence, meaning that they will do whatever you agree to. That's what you're actually facing. And you can ask an attorney that, but you have to be careful. You don't ask them questions they can't answer. And if they ask you and tell you too blatantly honest what the truth is, they could lose their life because they're in a secret organization, or in this case, a subversive organization. Okay, so they're actually an insurrection right now. So the sovereign, which is the average state person, a person like myself, has a responsibility, according to them, to not agree with anything that they would presume. 1933 and the change of the law, the change of the money, and the change of all that was going on in government had to do with everything is set up as a presumption. And we've heard that. They treat me like I'm guilty, you know, and so yeah, they treat you like you're guilty because that's the presumption. You're wrong, and whatever it is, they're going to find it. Always a witch hunt. except that there is some illegality and therefore unlawfulness operable in systems that use that modality with any of us. Okay, so the sovereign must say, well, that law isn't mine, UCC 1-103, and the law that's supposed to be used, which is UCC 1-301, is the law of the Declaration of Independence. And if you don't know to say that, they will presume that you want to go into a commercial court, and then you're under rules that have nothing to do with the rights of the man. You're in a commercial court, and they're treating you not as a sovereign, but as a child or baby or ward that they have to take responsibility for, except that they don't. Okay? 4B begins to illustrate that. It's the Emergency Banking Act Commercial Court. It's settler grantor, typical award of the mind or capacity of the Emergency Banking Act is who actually gets in there. And most of us have been trained up that way, myself included. And so, but I've had to try to learn past it. And so it's a slow process, but, you know, I try hard. So the governor, the government trustee fiction role is set up. They change all the roles around. So you, the beneficiary who have the power of executorship to be a sovereign, they switch you over to be the trustee. They switch the judge over to be you. Basically, you become the judge becomes the beneficiary, and then they bring in somebody called a prosecutor, a decision maker, and he's a bar agent as well. So you got two bar agents now running in the roles of who you used to be and holding you as a trustee during that court process. Okay? And so you have to know that's going on. And that is a fiction, which means that's occurring while at the same time you are exactly the man of the sovereign and beneficiary executor role of the number 3 and 4A. But you don't know to say those things. Now, if you stood in front of a building and on camera just gutted somebody and killed them, then under common law you're going to die in a matter of hours. But under commercial law, they make money out of your trust fund by locking you up. So they're going to lock you up for 10 or 20 years or for life because they're getting $10,000 a month or more out of your trust fund. What trust fund? The Bar Association and the reason why they want to hold on to this power is because if they can lock up 1 million guys, that means that they're making $10 million a month minimum just by people being locked up. I mean, minus expenses. But it makes it quite a lucrative business. And it has an ever-ending supply of trust fund money. And the trust fund money is the money that is in surety for a bankruptcy that ended in 2003. It's referred to in the first paper but rather quickly because it's a whole topic. So, under box 4B, ward fiction role changes. LAD gives executor jurisdiction to the bar agent for their judgment of the law and the facts by the democratic communism. And that's the problem that you have. They're not a republic government system. They're a system that is now unlawful and illegal in the United States by my orders, that is trying to operate a communism, and they cannot do communism in this country unless they are registered as foreign agents. Anybody who's doing communism or democratic socialism in the United States must be registered. Anyone not registered and attesting to the fact that that's what they're planning to do in this country is in violation of all law. Okay? So, the ward status of the Emergency Banking Act, DBA 1933, Commerce Court, is in the involvement of a fiduciary relationship. That means something to do with your money, because that's what it is. It's a constructive fraud distribution, because they have to construct something that would be otherwise unlawful, and that is putting themselves in positions in order to operate the court, because they're taking the operative role of the sovereign and distributing that role responsibility between the two bar agents, except that it's only one bar. They're working together. Okay, so that's a constructive fraud. based upon the reliance upon the false representation of the facts. Okay, so they get you to believe this, and if they get you to believe this, and they create a harm to you, then they have damaged you, and that's what this begins to refer to, with the effect of the harms and damage made upon the beneficiary, with the law. And with the law means by the what? By the standard of the law of the Declaration of the Independence, and by the law, because that's what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be doing the Declaration of Independence to protect your trust value, and that's what they've been hired for. And they have not done that because they did not stop the trust in 2003, and they're still operating these courts. And in some of the rulings and the what they're doing is democratic socialism, which is insurrection after 2003. Okay, so that's why they're trying to kill everything and flood the people into across the border and do all these different types of maneuvers, including COVID virus. Okay, so the dots between, I made a definition list, so I'll just go over it. So the dots before a word means, like here, is referring to it being an object of a preposition, if you know what that is. But that means it's a noun. So if it's if you say man, are you referring to an emphatic statement, or are you saying there is in fact a man, or run? Are you referring to an action like a verb or an activity, or are you saying that it is a 20-mile run or something like that? It changes the context quite a bit, but that's the operation of the punctuation. That does that in English. Trustee, to maintain the property, title, responsibility to the absolute advantage made upon the beneficiary. Whatever they got, they're supposed to be giving it to you and making your life better. So these college kids that have these $1.5 million trust funds since they were a baby, and it's been growing like gangbusters, and they're struggling to pay these loans off, and they're just they're just working them down to their bones and stressing them out. But they have a trust fund. Why isn't the trustee just saying, "Oh, just pay that off and it's done"? Because they're trying to tool you. They want you dead. They want you in crisis. They want you in basic social psychosis. Anyway, beneficiary is supposed to receive the absolute advantage of the benefit from the property, title, proceeds held by the trustee until the baby ward is sovereign, and then you're supposed to take over your trust fund. So the rules there is after 2003, about 21 years old, you're supposed to go in and request your trust fund. You have to authenticate yourself, file your documents into the public record, and then that proves you're there because that's a fact environment. And then you request your trust fund. And so everybody's a gazillionaire, even the guys on the street saying, "We'll work for food," millionaires. Okay, so the and real money, gold and silver. So the executor is supposed to provide that, make that choice, and they're making it for you without benefit to you. So that's a fraud. Okay. So you don't know to do it, and then you're also a ward state. There's only two states, like I mentioned in document 1. There's a ward and there's a sovereign. When you're a ward, you're incompetent, but if you're already taking care of all your business, you're not incompetent. You just don't know this, and that's because you were dumbed down. That's also a fraud. Okay, jurisdiction is a right, duty, authority for the speaking and the acting. So that's why they have to always get you and sucker you into agreeing with what they're doing and because you don't know any better, you just walk in there wide eyes open, and they smack you between the eyes every time. A fraud is a breach of the trust fiduciary relationship with the either commission, them doing something, or omission, failing to do something, performance, okay, because it's a performance contract, which means that in the end, we're supposed to see a benefit being made on every beneficiary in this country, okay, no matter what. So when their performance is in the non-conformity with the covenant, what covenant? With the Declaration of Independence for life, liberty, property, and happiness, they have violated their jobs. Now, I'm not saying that they're supposed to make it okay for a person who's dangerous and criminal, because that's just an overreach, and that's an illusion. That's not most of us, but we're suffering like we are because they're using this bad technique, and they're in violation of the trust and fraud of the covenant. Their performance is not in conformity with the Declaration of Independence or the Emergency Banking Act. They're 21 years over on a trust that should have been closed, and they've got people struggling and living on the streets, and families are suffering, and they will not give your trust monies back. As a matter of fact, they're trying to kill you or run you into some type of crisis so they can bring in a military or create a civil war. And that's the problem we're facing right now. So we must grow up, must wake up, and establish ourselves, identify ourselves, request a trust fund closure. And the bar is already been determined to be unlawful in this country by my orders of the, it's actually R418 US, and on my page there's a reference to that, and it's in the public record at the Pinal County in Arizona State Country. So that information has already been done. The military already knows it. Joint Chief of Staff has been notified, and many officers and other legal trustee agents have been notified. And the law is I only have to notify one, and I'll probably notified 600 or more. Okay, so either they're not going to do the job or they're going to do the job, whatever the case, but your rights have been protected, and that has been done. That was completed in November, on November 18th in 2022. It's just the hardest thing to do is to get people to listen and to know that that has been done, because we have been taught not to look at it, and if we do, that it would cause us significant pain, like brain pain, okay, a water boy. So anyway, that's it. Blessings upon you. Shalom.